everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Omnichannel Marketer. This is your host, Kate Stevens, and I am joined today by Ben Witte, founder and CEO of Recess. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hi, Kate. I'm doing well, thanks. Excited to be with you.
So why don't we just start out with a little bit more about your personal background and, how you ultimately came to found Recess?
Yeah, so I did not come from the CPG industry. I started my career in the early stage kind of technology startup scene. I was in San Francisco from 2010 to 2016, and I was at two different very early stage advertising technology companies. First company out of school was building an influencer marketing platform for social media back in 2010, which was kind of right idea, wrong time, was a little too early. And then I joined another advertising technology company that was pioneered retargeted advertising. And so some of those lessons actually really applied to how, we architected the Recess strategy, which had a focus on the channel distribution and digital brand building, which I can speak to today.
So tell us a little bit more about, Recess as a brand and kind of the founding story.
Yeah, so the kind of founding story was, after spending 6 years in Silicon Valley, I kind of got the startup bug and recognized I definitely wanted to start my own company, but also recognized my passions and strengths were better suited to kind of building something in the consumer product space versus building software for businesses. And so went out on my own to kind of explore a couple of different ideas. And this was around 2016, which is when it felt to me that we were entering kind of increasingly stressful times. It was right after Trump got elected. And I just had this, broad thesis that we were entering this new period in history driven by technology, and it was leaving us all kind of increasingly stressed out and anxious. And that in the future, people would be prioritizing kind of their mental wellness, more than they had been previously. And that was going to lead to a number of different lifestyle changes and opportunities. And then kind of shortly thereafter, I observed the rise of functional ingredients like CBD, adaptogenic herbs, magnesium, nootropics, THC even to an extent. And to me, they all had the common property of helping people relax. And so the original kind of insight for Recess was RedBull for relaxation. But we've taken this pretty expansive view, which is there's this entirely new relaxation product space emerging across, functional beverage, supplement, and beyond. And Recess was really designed to become a leading brand platform, in the space. And I like to think about, where this is similar to where energy drinks was 20 years ago. And we're basically kind of Red Bull space. So,
and you said the category was adaptogens. How did it? Where? I don't know much about them, so please educate me on how the different categories or how those fit in, and where did Recess start? With the product.
Yeah, so I don't look at that's not a category; it's a functional ingredient, similar to how caffeine is the functional ingredient in an energy drink, or alcohol is the functional ingredient in an alcoholic beverage. Both of those kind of deliver a feeling and an effect, right? You use an energy drink or coffee to get stimulated, use alcohol to get intoxicated. And I look at these new functional ingredients, again, like adaptogens, CBD, magnesium, nootropics, etc., as the functional inputs into this new class of consumer products. So I don't define the category, by the ingredient, just like you don't call the energy drink category the caffeine category. I kind of define it more around the kind of the use case, the value proposition, and the feelings.
Okay, that makes complete sense. And so which ingredient of those that you listed did Recess start with ultimately? And, I'm sure you've added several since then.
We always kind of took an approach of combining a variety of ingredients. In the first version of Recess, we used CBD and 3 different adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogens, to define the term, are a class of botanical or herbs that have the common property of helping you kind of reduce stress and help your body kind of achieve a balanced and equilibrium state. We've then since expanded. We have a kind of majority of the business is this line called Recess Mood, which leverages magnesium and adaptogens as the functional ingredients. And then we also have a line of ready-to-drink mocktails that we just launched that also leverages magnesium or adaptogens in an ingredient called guayusa. So very much kind of more of a lifestyle brand approach. And the ingredients, again, are the inputs into the feelings and the use cases we're designing products for.
Okay, that makes complete sense. And how'd you think about that first channel that you launched in? Then, where has the brand expanded since then?
So we launched in basically exactly 5 years ago in around November 2018. And, as an outsider into the CPG industry, one of my observations was I was kind of shocked that no one at the time was really talking about digital or e-commerce from both a brand building perspective and a distribution perspective. And, the beverage industry is fundamentally, that we can talk about this later, is, really a brand marketing driven industry, to generate a lot of, consumer awareness, especially when driving the development of a new value proposition in a new category. And at the time, really no one was talking about Instagram or Facebook, as channels to reach people. It was really focused on more offline marketing. And so our strategy was to launch direct to consumer and architect ourselves as kind of a digitally native brand from both a brand building perspective and a, distribution perspective, and kind of validate the idea online before we go offline. And it, worked, tremendously well. I launched a company out of my apartment, in the East Village in New York. And we had we're really pretty well known for kind of the brand world that we created, around the beverage, in Instagram. And we, then immediately went into New York City, into the retail market in New York City a few months later. And so, relevant to the name of this podcast, we always took the view that we were going to build this business to be an omnichannel business, again, from both a distribution perspective and a brand marketing perspective.
And so, how has that channel distribution evolved? And it sounds like you launch in retail. What do those specific retailers look like? How do you think about that specific to beverage as a category, or even, the feeling that you're providing at which, helps relax your customers? Like, does that at all affect your distribution strategy? As, I know it definitely does in, the alcohol category, for example.
Mm-hmm. So look, I'd say, first focusing on, back then, again, this was a new idea. There was really no such thing as a beverage designed to help you relax and kind of remain calm back then. And so I think it was very important that we were able to kind of architect this very cohesive brand narrative, predominantly in social media, that was very easy for people to then kind of share with their friends. And so that, the story of recess is very simple. It's an antidote to modern times. Take a recess so that you can feel calm, cool, collected, right? And so we had I think it was a very easy idea for people to understand. And again, we did that, through compelling content and stories, that we created, ourselves with our own content, and, partnered with, various creators to kind of help establish the use case and define the feeling. I think beverage is a very unique category, because when you think about it, there's literally no other product on the planet that gets as much distribution as a beverage. And so it's very important for a beverage to work. It has to be kind of available all around you, right? And so we started, our first market we focused on, was New York City. And the unique thing about New York City is bodegas, right? There's no other really city or market that has bodegas. In our first year, we got into basically every bodega in New York. And so there was this super powerful, I think, combination of a really compelling kind of digital brand that told the story of recess and introduced the proposition. And then just, being in every street, market in New York, it just kind of was always around you. And so kind of helped establish the brand and make it seem bigger, than it was. And so I'd say, and that's kind of remained, the strategy, over the course. We're still about 60% e-com, 40% retail. Amazon's, we both have a direct-to-consumer channel and an Amazon channel. Amazon, a vast majority of our e-commerce business. But I think that when you have a balanced split between e-com and retail, I think it creates a super powerful brand flywheel effect to it, which I can speak to more. Yeah, on the retail side of the business, we're in about 15,000, retailers to date. While we started in just New York City, we're in kind of almost every major market around the country. And, this year has been this past year, we really focused on launching kind of the major national retailers. So we launched Target, Albertsons, Safeway, H-E-B, Sprouts, Winn-Dixie, Fresh Time Market, Fresh Market, etc. And again, it's all, and again, part of the philosophy is each kind of channel helps drive, the other, so to speak. And I can speak to that further.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear you speak a little further about how the different channels drive that flywheel. And you also talked about how the e-commerce and retail creates that flywheel. So would love to dive a little bit deeper in there.
Yeah, so I'd say if you look at, our marketing spend right now, it's essentially all performance marketing. So the philosophy, I think Amazon is the engine, for, basically should be the engine for most consumer products businesses that have this omnichannel distribution model. Because if you can make Amazon work profitably, I mean, again, the scale potential there is significant. And the way I think about it is all the media that we're spending to drive our Amazon business also benefits our retail business. So, if 1% of people are clicking on the ad, the other 99 people are still seeing them. And so when they walk into the retail store, they're more likely to, pull it off the shelf because they've been exposed, to the messaging. And I look at that as essentially like media that pays for itself through the e-commerce channel. And then, vice versa. If someone discovers, recess at their local cafe or their grocery store, they fall in love with it and they want to have it around all the time, they can subscribe to it on our website or Amazon. And we have a very high subscription order rate relative to other beverage companies because it's the type of product that becomes a daily habit for many people. So, if people drink a recess on the weeknights instead of their, traditional glass of wine and want to drink alcohol on the weekends, you always want to have it around. Right. And so I see kind of both channels and product distribution channels and, brand awareness generating channels kind of driving the other. So on that point, I do look at retail distribution as a form of marketing in itself. Right. It does help kind of establish the brand and establish the idea. And obviously, I feel the same about kind of our digital presence too.
And so just to understand how you think about that performance marketing and tactically. So you're running ads on Meta that drop a customer. Are you sending them to Amazon to purchase, or are you sending them to your website? How do you think about that, and that broader kind of education leaking through to your retail customers?
So we have different campaigns driving to both. So some campaigns will drive to Amazon, some campaigns will drive to our website. And Meta is a big channel for us, Google, TikTok, and then I'd say kind of micro influencer. We get a tremendous amount of kind of organic user generated content, with that we don't have to pay for. And then we have a pretty large, just like community of, passionate recess consumers that that will spread the word, organically, sometimes use affiliate links. And so the kind of primary kind of channels that we've used to date online.
So you talked about kind of the effect that digital marketing can have on retail, and then, conversely, you can acquire a customer from retail. Are you investing at all in, more of the traditional activations on the retail side, around shopper marketing or, in-store sampling? How do you think about that playing into your marketing mix?
Yeah, I'd say, on a relatively small scale to date, this year has been the first year where we've really moved into these national retailers. So we definitely do a decent amount of sampling. We have kind of field marketing teams in, LA and New York, and we have lots of people reaching out to us that are having events that, want to serve, recess there as the alcohol alternative, often. And then, we'll work with our kind of retail partners for, specific kind of promotions. So, for example, Dry January is coming up. That's a big kind of month for us because one of the primary use cases is as an alcohol alternative. And so our retail partners will look to build like very large displays there. So yeah, it's a combination.
And how much education have you needed to do as a brand to educate consumers, retailers about, about your product and this alternative solution to drinking?
I'd say, when we first started out in 2018, no one, both the retail space, the distributors and consumers weren't really talking about it all that much. It was really a bet that this was going to be a proposition that was going to grow in demand over the years to come. And just like every, new category is really driven by, a category defining brand, like that was the business plan. Like we were going to drive the development, of this space. And, again, I think we took the correct approach. There was a lot of companies just selling these individual functional ingredients or just focused on marketing the ingredient, but we wanted to take more of a lifestyle brand approach, more market, connect with people emotionally, et cetera. And I think that was, the right approach to establish it. And, there's a combination of education around the use cases and the functional ingredients in the product as well, again, as the kind of more the lifestyle brand marketing approach. But, over the past 5 years, space has just gotten a lot larger. And we view that as a good thing. We think that, the more players that are here, it's kind of in some ways like free marketing for the idea. We're still the number one brand in, most of the categories that we're competing in. But the idea of alcohol alternatives, the idea, the term adaptogens is just much, much more widely, understood. And there's a lot of other examples, like that have grown in popularity over the years to come, over the past few years. Again, we still think we're in the relatively early stages, of this space's development. It's going to take the right combination of education around the ingredients and the usage occasions, as well as clever, emotional brand marketing that connects with, emotionally with people.
So I've had the founder of Dessoir on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
or so the CEO of Dessoir, and so obviously they're in the non-alc space, and they talk a lot about how they need to educate and define the category. So much so that when they're in retail, they're like a lot of retailers are still figuring out where
Mm-hmm.
that should be merchandised on the shelves. So I'm curious, how much do you think that you're playing in category creation? It sounds like the category has evolved a lot, even since you started the brand. And then how is that translated into like where are customers physically in the store finding your product? How does that, play into the merchandising?
So I'd say the difference between us and a Dessoir, for example, is that we've taken this platform approach. So we actually have four different product lines. The first two product lines are Recess with CBD and then Recess Mood beverage line. Those are merchandised in the functional beverage set. So next to Olipop, Poppy, and kombuchas and energy drinks often. We have a line of Recess Mood powders. So I think like Liquid IV, but for calm. And those are merchandised in the supplement aisle. Next to this relaxation, stress relief, mood support, sleep supplements. And then our mocktails are merchandised, next to Dessoir, the alcohol aisle traditionally in this emerging alcohol alternative set. And so one of the unique things about, again, on the channel strategy, both it applies in both e-com versus retail standpoint, but also in the different categories within the store that we play in. And again, part of the philosophy here is these are all just different usage occasions for the idea of recess. So our mocktails are really designed to be consumed in a more social setting. So like where you would drink, a hard seltzer or alcohol, the people, when you're at a party, at the beach, at the pool, at the park, at a dinner party, our view is that people are going to switch off between an alcoholic beverage and a non-alcoholic beverage. And the positioning of that product line is your favorite cocktail without the consequences. So the flavors are a Paloma, a margarita, a Moscow Mule, a mojito. The Recess Mood lines in the functional beverage set, people traditionally drink that on a weeknights instead of their evening glass of wine, or the afternoons instead of their an energy drink or a cold brew coffee. And then the powders are helps you take a recess on the go if you're traveling, keep a stick pack in your car, in your purse, in your bag. And again, we think there's some like powerful kind of flywheel effects with that model. And you're walking throughout the store, you see recess kind of in your periphery, in different places. That helps kind of establish the brand. And so that's kind of been our approach, as we see that this proposition is emerging in multiple categories and places at retail.
So you talked about kind of a 60-40 split between e-com and retail, which honestly is really high on the e-com split relative to, what I hear from most beverage brands. I wonder if that is, due to you being this lifestyle brand. Obviously, you started digitally native, but a lot of beverage brands started that way. And retail becomes, overwhelming majority. There's even like several beverage brands that are moving away from e-com entirely because of just the cost to ship beverage. It's heavy, and the ways in which beverage consumers consume beverage. So I'm curious, why do you think that you've been able to maintain such a large e-commerce kind of share? And then how do you see that? I know that you have several large retailer mass launches. How do you see that kind of shifting on go forward basis?
Yeah. Well, I think e-com is very difficult to make work if you have a price point like a LaCroix or a bubbly. If it's just like sparkling water, because if you think about it, it costs the same amount of money to ship a recess as it does LaCroix. LaCroix is 25 or 50 cents a can. We're $2.99 a can, and so the math works better in our case. The other dynamic with our business is again the high subscription order and reorder rate. It becomes daily habit, a weekly habit for a lot of people. So the LTV for our customers is quite high. Another dynamic is on Amazon. I look at Amazon as a product search engine, right? So for terms like non-alcoholic drink, mocktail, common drink, we're the number one organic ranking brand for all of those terms and many more. And so there's this kind of flywheel effect there. Is once you get off to kind of an early lead within Amazon and these key search terms, it just kind of compounds on itself. So we're seeing most of our our majority of our growth is on Amazon. I know I just as a might be an out of date number, but a couple months ago we were one of the top five fastest growing beverage brands on Amazon, and so I expect to probably shift more to like 40% e-com, 60% retail. We kind of continue to move and expand the number of doors and chains and add new key retailers. But I definitely think we will definitely have this omnichannel business model, which is very powerful.
And so, with that omni-channel business model, how do you bridge the gap between all of the different channels that you're selling through to, provide that consistent customer experience?
Look, I mean, can you elaborate on like the question a little bit more, like in terms of like, how the organization's structured or?
Yeah, I mean, you could take the question however you'd like. I think that with D2C, you completely control the customer experience from
Yeah.
the, ad that they see to, their shipping experience to their unboxing experience. There are
Mm-hmm.
various, points at which that stops, whether you're selling through Amazon or to retail.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
there's, different ways that a brand will think about kind of having that brand consistency or maintaining that
Yeah.
customer relationship, knowing that their customer really does shop probably across, multiple of the channels that you sell through. So I guess like,
Yeah.
your approach as a brand to acknowledging that.
Yeah, totally. Look, I'd say working backwards, the strategy has always been to become the most well-known and largest relaxation brand in the world, right? When you think about like energy, what are the first things that come to mind? It's Red Bull, Monster, Starbucks, right? When you think about, hydration, it's probably Smart Water, Essentia, et cetera, right? When you think about, refreshment and like, it's Coca-Cola, Pepsi, we see this is a fundamentally new kind of value proposition that was emerging. And our strategy was to take the set of actions that, allowed us to become the most well-known brand, for this new proposition. And I think the omnichannel model kind of helps achieve that. And there's trade-offs, in each channel, right? On your website, you obviously have a lot more control around like how the product is presented and messaged. On Amazon, yeah, it's true that you don't get as much data there, but you're obviously getting a huge amount of scale, right? You have all these people going in, typing in, I want, magnesium, or I want a relaxation drink, or I want a mocktail. And that's super powerful to have the brand kind of show up against, that purchase intent. At retail, it's someone, it's people either going to be looking for open-minded to finding new beverages, to try, and you want to be in the part of the store where you're most relevant for, that certain occasion. But you also have people that, just, shopping every night, right? And they're just going to, buy recess a couple times a week, when they're getting things for dinner. And so we think there's, again, trade-offs, in each channel in terms of your ability to message and market and control the experience, but they all really work together to help us achieve our goal, which is to be the largest relaxation brand, because we think that top of mind brand awareness for, a new value proposition with the tailwinds, that, we think this is very powerful. And, again, to the point of your podcast, like the omnichannel approach from both a brand building perspective and distribution perspective really helps drive that.
Makes complete sense. How would you define the word omni-channel?
To me, in our case, I would say it's the combination, the split between, digital brand building and distribution, and offline, retail brand building and distribution. And so, that's how I would define it. And then I think it also can apply, uh, if you're just focusing on, retail, there are a lot of different channels in retail. There's, grocery, drug, convenience, natural channel, on premise. And so I think there's also an application, in the real world, in terms of what are the channels and types of places you want to show up in the real world.
And you said from a distribution perspective, you're around 15,000 retailers at this stage. And, what does approximate revenue look like?
Do close to 25 million in sales this year. We'll at least, on track to at least double that next year.
All right, so shifting focus, one of the things I, love asking all of the founders on our podcast is something that they feel, boldly or passionately about why this topic is important to you.
Channel specifically, or any topic?
Nope. Any topic.
I think when starting a company, and especially when you're creating, a new category and taking a new strategy, one of the things I found is like just how often the conventional wisdom is right. in terms of like our marketing approach, even digital brand building. When we launched, it's wild to me like how many people didn't believe that e-commerce was possible, or that marketing on social media was relevant. There was the conventional wisdom that it's just like hands on lips, that's all that mattered. And I think there's so many different topics like that throughout the journey of Recess where the conventional wisdom was wrong. And so I think to do anything innovative and kind of break through in today's world, which is very, very crowded, right? In both generating attention or in a new categories like this alcohol alternative category is now, very, very crowded. I think you have to think differently, and be willing to be, misunderstood, frankly, for long periods of time, have conviction about your approach. And I think in the case of Recess, it's really started to pay off this year. A lot of aspects, of our strategy and our approach were, again, non-consensus, and we made a bunch of bets that, again, rejected many of the much conventional wisdom in the industry, but I think have started to pay off. And so it's probably one of the things I feel most strongly about. It's just, as an entrepreneur, it's important to really question the conventional wisdom and be willing to reject it if you, in some cases, not all cases, like, there's some cases where the conventional wisdom is right, but certainly not all.
When you were seeing that external rejection, because, Ben, I 100% agree with you, what gave you kind of the confidence that, everyone else was wrong?
Thinking in first principles. Everyone used to call this the CBD category. I'm like, I've never heard anyone call RedBull a caffeine company, or that you don't call the category the caffeine category, you call the energy category. It's about the feeling of the ingredient. I went to the omnichannel and the digital brand building. I would just work backwards from, you walk around the world and you just think about, like, there's Coca-Cola ads everywhere. There's neon signs outside of every bar and gas station for beverage brands. It's fundamentally about, like, how can you generate the most amount of impactful brand impressions, to help establish this idea. And I was like, obviously those brand impressions are going to shift to online, right? Like, or not, and not at the expense of offline, but that was going to be added, right? And so it's just like really trying to break down, like, what are the components that are required to build, a successful product in whatever category, you're in. Beverage is, again, a very different category than, personal care or beauty. You don't walk into a gas station and buy, lots of products in other categories, but, in beverage you do. Right. So I think it's like, what are the dynamics, whatever category that you're operating in, and what are the key inputs into success? And really trying to, really trying to break down those key components and think from first principles.
Moving into our lightning round, so just kind of like quick answers. Your favorite omni-channel brand?
Liquid Death has been a great example of how they've been able to do really compelling, digital content marketing and kind of viral stunt marketing to kind of create awareness for this very simple idea. It's just water in a can. But, throughout the year, and throughout the past few years, they've done some really compelling, again, digital content marketing that's ultimately drives velocity at retail.
What thing that you wish you could change about our industry?
I mean, I think it's starting to happen more, but I don't think digital marketers and, people that were excelled at thinking, in digitally native brand building and kind of retail distributors really were completely separated, for a number of years. I think it's starting to change, where a retailer and a distributor is starting to see the value of digital brand building and a successful e-commerce channel versus for years they viewed it as competitive, when in reality I think it's not competitive at all. Like, if you have a successful e-commerce strategy, it's going to drive retail and benefit your distribution partners. And so I wish these two worlds kind of intersected more. I think it's starting to happen, but I think it took a while.
Favorite podcast?
I like this podcast called the All In Podcast, which is around the technology and kind of current events. I like this podcast, Invest Like the Best. That interviews, prominent investors and founders. I like this podcast called Founders, where this guy kind of summarizes biographies of famous entrepreneurs. I'm a big podcast and audiobook consumer.
Sounds like it.
The name's escaping me, but I love this guy, Rory Sutherland, who's a famous ad agency exec. Could look it up real quick. But I wrote this great book, emotional brand marketing. I can follow it up and put it in the show notes, but that would be one. I also like the book *Sapiens* by Yuval
Mhm.
Harari, and kind of one of the insights from that book that applied to Recess was just like the power storytelling and narrative, in society. And I think that obviously applies to, brand marketing and, introducing new ideas into the world. You really have to have a story that people can connect with and understand and, ultimately share with their friends. I always work backwards from like, how would someone describe this product to their friends? So I think that book really was impactful, again, in terms of the idea of storytelling.
Event that you're excited about attending in 2024?
Actually, probably Burning Man. I used to go. I went a couple
Hmm.
times. I lived in San Francisco. My girlfriend and I were just talking about committing to kind of going back this year. I found it very kind of inspiring and cool, this world experience.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for your time. Where can our listeners connect with you?
Twitter, I'm at Ben Witte, Witte, or Instagram, bwitty, or takearecess.com. You can read all about Recess and find us on Amazon and hopefully tailors all around you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's good to talk.
If you liked this podcast, follow me and the Bridge page on LinkedIn and Twitter for hot takes and tactical advice. If you really loved today's episode, we'd love a review on the podcasting platform of your choice, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thanks for listening.